Hi, in this video I will be discussing the IRIS model and evidence-based practices that we learned about through the model. Um, I do have a lot of experience with evidence-based practices. I have been working with students with autism over the last 20 years. Um, First, when they used to call it IBI, Intensive Behavior Intervention, and then moving into discrete trial teaching and ABA. So I do have a lot of experience working with students from preschool age through to high school. And within doing that, I have worked through several evidence-based practices. I was lucky enough to work with Donald, Dr. Ronald Leaf and John McCacken with Autism Partnership. And they were some of the people who worked with Dr. Loves at UCLA in the 70s to develop the discrete trial teaching. So I have a lot of practice with that and working one-on-one with students with autism. I also got to work with Paul Dories, and he was a consultant when I worked at our WOXI, which is our SELPA. Through him, we learned also a lot of evidence-based practices, such as obviously picture exchange communications systems. So I learned a lot about that, working on helping students have a voice and learning to communicate with pictures rather than behavior. That was very interesting to work with the preschool students when we just taught that and went through the different phases. And I think going through starting at the beginning and teaching students helped to understand that system better when we were working with older students. Also working on narratives, often called social stories, where we would either take pictures or draw pictures and do a little paragraph about different situations. That is very useful when working with students who have more stress behaviors, such as fire alarms at school, to write those narratives to help them understand the situations better. Also, we have worked with, let's see, things such as exercise. I often think of that when we do sensory, but I have worked with students where we've taken pictures of the playground outside, and they've been able to, as they start to get more energy and such, go out and get some of that energy out on the monkey bars or swings. Also teaching students that were a little bit older more appropriate and healthy habits such as stretching and yoga. Those seems to help a lot decrease behaviors and help students feel more regulated, as well as working through things such as the social skills with peer mediators and scripted play. Working with many students on those things, having kids come in and be good role models for the students to help them learn more appropriate social skills. So those are all some really great evidence-based practices that I have been able to learn and work through students with. A few that I read through on the list that I would be interested in learning more about are the naturalistic interventions. That sounds like it would be really interesting to learn, and I think it would probably, in my mind, be easier to generalize for students to be able to utilize and stream right into being more independent. And then the other one is the pivotal response. That one I did have heard about, but I would be interested in learning more about it. That one sounds like it would be an interesting one to help some of the kiddos out with that I work with autism. And then my final thoughts are on the faces of autism. Those stories were very touching and resonated with me. Number one, the family that has two children with autism, the 13-year-old boy who was first diagnosed with, I believe, ADHD, and then at 10 learned that he actually had autism, and how that family deals with that and does go through their daily life, as well as the younger sister who was diagnosed at 2. And just the fact that there are so many faces, and I think people want to kind of hear a quick script on what autism is so they can understand it better. And really, it is kind of a human, I guess, disorder where it affects individuals and it affects everybody differently. So it's hard to define, it's hard to say exactly what it is. It really does differ from person to person and family of family that are affected. So I think that's what really resonated with me, the fact that we all are trying to understand this diagnosis to better help individuals that are diagnosed with it and living with it. But the fact that it is so hard to define because it does kind of constantly change and evolve depending on who the individual that has it and that's affected, as well as the different interventions and the different people that are involved. That was something that really resonated with me also as I was looking through the evidence-based practices and watched the videos. How the one person was saying, when you're choosing an evidence-based practice, not only does it matter what the student's behaviors are in trying to find an effective, I guess, strategy, but also the people who are going to be implementing it and their abilities and their belief in what they're doing and whether or not they feel that it's a good strategy also have an impact on whether or not it works. So there are so many layers and factors that go into working with and helping and coming up with different tools and strategies on whether or not those are effective and how the progress is going to be made with the student. There's just so many factors that it's difficult to actually say which practice will work and how a person with the diagnosis, how that really will affect their lives. Okay, that's it. I will see you in our next video journal. Thank you.